They say the devil walked through Salem. But if you're expecting horns and brimstone, you're not thinking dark enough. Evil doesn't stomp, it whispers. It smiles at your front door and asks to borrow sugar. It wears the face of a neighbor, a friend, a child. And in 1692, in a village already fraying at the edges, that whisper became a scream. It started with two girls. Sick, they said, bent at the spine, foaming at the mouth, babbling about shadows and claws and witches with skin like bark. The doctor, a man who knew as much about medicine as a butcher knows ballet, had one word: bewitchment. That was the spark, the fire, that was the people, God-fearing, sleep-deprived, steeped in sermons so thick with hellfire it clung to your clothes like smoke. These weren't skeptics, they were believers, and they were afraid. The girls gave names: Tituba, the enslaved woman from Barbados, with stories in her bones and eyes too wide for comfort; Sarah Good, a beggar who muttered to herself; Sarah Osborne, who skipped church and married the wrong man. That's all it took. In a town like Salem, eccentricity was a death sentence. Tituba confessed, under duress, of course. She spoke of riding with witches, of signing the devil's book. She said, "The devil came to me and bid me serve him." But it wasn't proof they wanted. It was confirmation. Tituba gave them the story they were starving for, and it fed the frenzy. The trials began. They called it justice, but it was theater. Hysteria as holy ritual. No evidence, no logic. Just wide eyes, shaking hands, and a court that took ghost stories as gospel. If someone said your spectre pinched them in their sleep, that was enough. You were done. Bridget Bishop ran a tavern. She wore red, danced, even hung. Rebecca Nurse, 61, pious, frail, stood in court trembling as her neighbors testified against her. Her own sister begged the judges to listen. Rebecca simply said, "I am innocent as the child unborn," still hung. Martha Corey rolled her eyes once too many times. Hung. And Giles Corey, well, he said nothing, not guilty, not innocent, just silence. So they crushed him, laid stones on his chest until his ribs cracked like firewood. His last words: "More weight. You want horror? That's horror. But what if it wasn't madness? What if it was math?" AI ran the map, plotted the accused, plotted the accusers. And the lines weren't random. Accusers lived in the poor end of town. The accused, landowners, church favorites, people with more, people in the way. AI analyzed land disputes, inheritance battles, debts, and grudges, and it all aligned. The witch hunts were a bloodletting of resentment. The devil was convenient, but the motives, purely human. This wasn't just fear. It was a purge, a quiet little war dressed in God's robes. And no one stopped it. Not the judges, not the ministers, not the neighbors who watched friends vanish into cells and gallows. 20 were executed, 5 more died in jail. Dozens more were broken, emotionally, spiritually, financially. And when it was over, when the screaming stopped and the devil retreated back into the shadows, everyone pretended they hadn't been part of it. The girls disappeared, the records got dusty, the town moved on, but the echo never died. AI hears it, today. It sounds like hashtags, cancel culture, clicks without consequence, false accusations that spread faster than truth ever could. The tech has changed, but the instinct, that same old itch to blame, to punish, to burn. There were people who fought back. Quietly, a few ministers who questioned the frenzy. Judge Nathaniel Saltonstall resigned in protest. Thomas Brattle wrote a letter condemning the trials, calling him a disgrace. Samuel Sewell, one of the judges, stood in church years later and confessed. Publicly, he begged forgiveness. His diary entry for that day reads, "God be merciful to me, a poor sinner." And then there were the ones who didn't speak, but still acted. They snuck food to the prisoners, hid the children, buried the dead when no one else would. That's the part they don't teach. That inside all that horror, some people held the line. But it wasn't enough. And here's the cruelest truth. For every voice of reason, there were 10 more waiting with a rope. Salem didn't just kill its witches. It killed its conscience. It showed the world how easy it is to lose your soul when you think you're saving it. And maybe the worst part. It worked. For a while, the accusers got attention, the leaders kept control, and the town kept moving, until the fire burned out and the ashes turned cold. But you can still smell the smoke. Even centuries later, descendants of the accused walk among us, quietly carrying the shame their ancestors never earned. Some have fought to clear their names, to rewrite the records, to remind the world that their bloodline began not with guilt, but with injustice. Others stay silent, letting the ghosts lie undisturbed. There are still memorials in Salem, stone slabs with etched names, where tourists leave coins or flowers or sometimes just stare, unsure if they're feeling pity or guilt. But the real legacy of Salem isn't carved in granite. It's carved in how we treat each other when the fear gets loud again. Fear doesn't always come dressed as evil. Sometimes, it wears a robe. Sometimes, it preaches. Sometimes, it looks like safety. But when it starts asking for names, when it whispers in your ear, just point, just accuse, just protect yourself, remember Salem. Remember how fast neighbors became executioners. How silence became complicity. How the truth got buried beneath superstition and survival. And ask yourself one question: when it comes for you, will you stand up? Or will you help light the fire? Because it always comes back. In some new form, in some new town, wrapped in a flag or a hashtag or a holy book. And it always knocks the same way, quiet, persistent, smiling. History doesn't repeat itself, but it has a rhythm. And the beat of Salem is still thudding beneath the floorboards. We think we're smarter now, more rational, but fear is primal. Fear doesn't care how many followers you have, or how enlightened you claim to be. When it hits you in the chest, when you feel your place in the world shake, truth becomes optional. And the fire starts again. That's what Salem teaches us. Not just what happened, but what can happen, what will happen, if we forget. The Salem witch trials weren't about witches. They were about people, and fear, and how damn easy it is to let the devil in when he's already sitting at your dinner table. Thank you for watching. This has been Mysteries Decoded by I. And the truth is no longer hiding.